All right, Bob, another exciting episode. This time we've got Chris Kalinski of Oklahoma City Public Schools. He's going to be talking about artificial intelligence. I'm curious to see how it's different than our interview with Mary Beth.
So I have a different curiosity, as you might guess, because you do the homework and I show up. So I want to find out, like, I really like, we had a conversation and we talked about, in a previous episode, we talked about favorite teachers. And that's what I want to know. Why? Who's your favorite teacher and why? So I'd like to propose a wager. We'll ask who their favorite teacher is. What do you think? Do you think they're going to know who their favorite teacher is, or are they not going to know? Because I knew right away.
So the bet is, will they? If we ask them who's your favorite teacher, the bet is, you bet that they will have an answer immediately.
Yeah. Who doesn't have a favorite teacher?
I think they're going to have to think about this. I think this is going to take a minute. So we're officially breaking the rules of the producer. Our producer has our questions for us. So officially, we are asking a different question at the end without our producer's permission, which will be more fun. And then if they hesitate, I win. And if they got an answer right away, you win.
Yes, and I'm going to win. But for the record, you've been asking the questions that the producers give us while I ask whatever the heck I want to ask.
Fair. Okay, so we'll do that at the end. Let's see what happens. Welcome, everybody. Today, we are joined by a luminary in the education technology space, Chris Kalinski. With over 20 years dedicated to fusing education, entertainment, and tech, his mission has consistently been to kindle inspiration and motivation in students, colleagues, and clients. He's an advocate who's not only passionate about revolutionizing how we learn, but he's also at the forefront of integrating technology into the classroom. Having worked at major institutions like Apple and University of Oklahoma, he's made his mark as an innovative learning coach, professional learning specialist, and even as the head of a robust video production team, producing literally thousands of educational content pieces. And now spearheading the efforts as the Executive Director of Education Technology at Oklahoma City Public Schools, he's shaping the future for around 34,000 students in the heart of Oklahoma. Chris Kalinski, welcome to the show.
Wow, Alex, thank you so much. Bob, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Luminary, I've never been called a luminary
I think
before.
luminary, not Illuminati. We're not trying to say that you sit at a large table and like plot the demise of society or anything like that. Though seriously, ed tech and broadcasting, it's entirely possible that you are.
For the record, it is. For the record, Alex had to look up the difference between luminary and Illuminati. So don't let him fool you with his, genius vocabulary. He's with his thesaurus.
I love it.
Our producers actually write most of that stuff anyway for us, and so we have a chance to look at it and modify it ever so slightly.
Then he had to sound it out.
Well, hey, I'm honored to be your guys' guest today. So I love to talk technology and AI. I love it. Thank you all.
Great to have you. So let's kind of start with your journey, which is pretty interesting. Like you kind of oscillated. I didn't even have to look that one up, Bob. You've kind of oscillated between broadcasting and ed tech your entire career, which is pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How does that happen? And then how does that ultimately lead to AI in education and your leadership there?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is I set out my goal in life at the time as I wanted to be Regis Philbin. That's who I wanted to be, was Regis Philbin. So that guy, I wanted to be that guy. And
this is where Bob is supposed to inject his joke about how short I am.
Well, if you were as tall as Regis, I would have made a short joke, but you
right.
All right. So that one's an interesting. Why Regis?
Well, I like making people laugh and I like telling stories, and I think that was part of me just wanting to do that. And I feel like bringing as much happiness and joy to people and making them laugh is great, right? And I think what I found was I was fortunate enough to be in a video production program in high school, and we had a cable access studio. And so it's kind of where I cut my teeth there. And my dad, his hobby was filming the football team and the band and the whole thing. So he was kind of filming. This was back when, you were carrying around the big VHS decks on your side when you're doing that. But I had the passion of sort of bloomed from that point in high school, and then carried over to the University of Oklahoma, where I got the undergrad degree. And I never set out to be a teacher. Well, as I worked in the industry for a while, I got a call from Gary Kramer, my teacher. Shout out to Gary there. And he said, "Hey, I'm retiring. Would you be interested in teaching?" And I was like, "Teaching? I was working 85 hours a week. Yeah, maybe I'll go back to that. I don't know. You said you have summers off? Okay, yeah, that sounds like an interesting idea."
Sucker.
Yeah, right.
You guys smarter than us, Alex.
That's right.
You traded 85 to 79
yeah,
hours
exactly.
a week.
Yeah, exactly. You bet. That was the best part, right? Like you walk in on day one. I had walked into a class at the time. They'd hired a teacher and it didn't work out. And I go into the classroom and they hadn't had students in 8 weeks. And it was like, so I made the very first mistake as a teacher, right? It's like, oh, so hey, what do we call you? Oh, just call me Chris. Oh, and it was downhill from there. That's when I wish I'd have had the AI tool and went, okay, hey, how do I teach a class again? Like, help me out with that. And so anyway, but loving technology and just everywhere I went and started. And so every opportunity I had to infuse it, I would. And I think, when I think back to, creating videos or Google Sites and those kinds of things for the students, so they can jump in and relearn what we just learned in class that day. I loved doing that kind of stuff. And I loved having fun with it, too. So that was the other thing. I figure if you can have a little bit of fun in education, the students might actually learn something too, But that's how that connected. There was just kind of growing that, and then just growing from there to everywhere I've gone. Any position that I've been in is just how can technology better or create a better learning experience for students, but also how can that be utilized as a tool for teachers to help them grow and achieve success in the classroom too. So yeah, I guess maybe that's a long-winded answer, but I really enjoy all of it. But I think it's really down to creating the best learning environments that you can for the students, and then also really making it a simplistic approach for the teacher so they can really connect with the student.
Well, it turns out Alex and I, if you've paid attention to the podcast, and we know somebody is listening, but hi, Mom and Dad.
That's right.
If you've paid attention to our podcast, Alex and I are on this.
I can't get my children to listen to it, by the way. I've tried.
No, come on now.
Well, they're children. They're not supposed to listen to you.
Oh, good point. Valid point, Bob.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of par for the course.
Yeah, at least that's what my kid tells me. So anyway, we're on this quest. We lack our own organic intelligence, so we're looking for somebody who knows something about artificial intelligence to see if we can work it on out here. But so something you said that was very interesting in there. We've talked to people both on our podcast and at conferences about AI in the classroom, and they always talk about the students, but they don't talk about the staff and the administrators. So I'd like, you've had a wealth of knowledge or experiences. What do you see for teachers, administrators, and what do you see for students that makes it so important that we figure out AI now in the classroom?
Oh, man. Absolutely. That's a great question. I think, it's funny because I really feel it's important to understand how to utilize a tool. So I guess let me take a quick step back. A lot of teachers will say, or a lot of administrators even as well, like, oh my gosh, we have one more law to follow. We have one more thing that's put on our plate, and it just continues to grow, right? And your plate, as you look at it, it looks like you just went to the digital buffet, right? You just you had all this stuff on the plate, and you can't get it off.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that problem? What does that look like? And so with artificial intelligence and AI, I think there's a really great opportunity here in understanding how to use the tool. I think you hit it, Bob, because if you don't understand how to use that tool, there's no way that you're going to be able to utilize it effectively, obviously, first and foremost. But then how do you get that communicated to your students as well to understand how to use that tool and how they're going to grow with it? I think when I think about pre-service teachers and teachers who are about to enter the teaching field, and also emergency certified teachers, they literally, like me, as an alternatively certified teacher, when I walked in, I didn't know the first thing about classroom management. I didn't know the first thing about creating a lesson plan. But what you do now, all of a sudden, you have a tool that you could say, okay, you know what? I need to teach this, and I need a lesson plan for XYZ. So understanding how to utilize that tool can really help them save time and actually, make them not sweat so much. And I'll tell you this, I went and I did a lesson just this last week for a professional learning session in one of the middle schools. And there was a teacher sitting in the room, and I'm not kidding when I say this. She was in the back, and I was talking about Magic School AI, one of the different tools that you could use. And we were going over lesson plans, how to create them, the right prompt to ask, and tears just started coming up in her eyes. And I was like, are you okay? Did I say something wrong? I just want to make sure that I didn't say. She goes, this is like the best thing I've ever seen. I needed this. I truly needed this. And so at that point, you're like, okay, we're doing something right here by just understanding how to use that technology. But I think, also too, you get the like, oh gosh, is this the Terminator? You know what I mean? Like everyone wants to know if Skynet is here. And you say, no, like, let's time out for just a minute. Like, how did you guys get here? Did you guys use a map? Because guess what? That's artificial intelligence. If you told your phone to tell you how to get to where you're going. But I always ask people if they've asked Siri or their Google Assistant today a question, and they're like, most people will raise their hand, and I'll say, well, you just ask artificial intelligence to do something for you, just kind of as a sample. But yeah, I think understanding how to utilize it as a tool, and then understand where they're going to be able to cut their time. I think that's the other important thing. Time is so critical, as we know.
It's the most precious commodity in education, right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't figure out how to carve that up a little bit, and the biggest thing, you guys know this as educators, it's like the social emotional learning connection between the teacher and the student is so important that we can create more time for that connection in the classroom to happen just by utilizing a tool, Yeah.
Okay, wait. Before you go on, Alex, are we just going to let the Skynet reference pass?
Like, sorry.
Who told Chris that we make arcane pop references to 80s, 70s, and 90s movies?
Sorry.
This is what we do.
Chris, what you do. I love it. Yes.
Right. You could ask your question now, but come on, Skynet. We had to get that.
Well, I'm pretty sure Skynet actually already existed before this AI stuff. So you can say, no, this isn't Skynet. It already exists. And then move on.
Are you going to take us through a loop where from the 1980s when the first movie was filmed to now, so it already exists? Now this is the beginning, and Alex is going to have to go back in time and save Chris? I don't know. Anyway,
something's gonna have to happen. Chris. I tell you what.
And I'm coming to like one of your training sessions with them. Remember when I said on that podcast that it wasn't Skynet?
It is.
All right, time for a serious question, Alex.
All right. So actually, let's chat a little bit about some of those. You just shared with us kind of some of the things that teachers can grow from and have success with and even cry over in terms of beauty and opportunity.
Right.
So, but I think I want to dive into some of the sort of emotionally overwhelming parts of AI, right? Like, so, are your teachers asking for AI? Are you showing them AI? Are they feeling overwhelmed, do they know enough about it to feel overwhelmed? Or how does that sort of, where are teachers with regards to AI, and where do you sort of feel like you need to inject yourself as a executive director of technology and shape that path?
That's a great question. I feel like, we're just at the dawn of it, right? Within the school district. Yeah. As a district, we've taken the stance of, we've opened up ChatGPT, we've opened up Google Bard, we've opened up Magic School AI as part of our, for staff, not for students. I should be clear about that. But for staff to explore. Well, what's interesting is that some of the meetings that you sit in, like with some of the emergency certified and new teachers, and you show them, okay, here's a tool that you guys might be interested in. I will tell you, probably about 80% of that room didn't know ChatGPT existed. Okay.
They didn't even know it existed.
No, they didn't know.
Okay.
No. Maybe the 20% maybe had heard of it. Okay. And maybe one or two had played around with it. And we're like kind of in it. So what I sort of attribute this to, like, when you go outside and you're like, okay, I've got this new cool toy I want to play with, and how do I use it, or how do I explore and utilize it, right? And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, okay, we're just starting this, explore this, and see how can you put this in your workflow? But then where we sort of interject that is we dive a little bit deeper into, okay, so now we know that we can create a lesson plan. Is that aligning to the state standard? Is that aligning to ISTE standard? Is that aligning to the standard that we need to go with, right? So that's where we start to interject a little bit. It's like, okay, now let's really tailor this a little bit, okay? So, and I also like to say that it's not an end-all, be-all. Like, I really like AI as a thought partner or a creative study buddy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, that's what I like to really express to them when I first introduce it is it's really just a tool to get you started, you know? And that's kind of where that's kind of where I feel like we take it a step further to start narrow focusing, you know, what that looks like when they're talking about their content.
Smart Technologies is not just a leading tech company, they're a connections company. Their industry-leading hardware and software solutions help teachers and students connect, engage, and improve outcomes with game-based activities and ready-made resources that save teachers time. Whether it's the latest generation of smartboard interactive displays or the all-in-one software Lumio, get your students excited and collaborating with Smart's dynamic tools built for every teacher, student, and learning environment. Find out more at smarttech.com.
Well, so Chris, when Alex and I, both in our non-podcast lifestyle, or our life, we still work in schools all day and every day, and we talk to administrators. And one of the things that is just mind-blowing to me 5 years or, a few years after COVID, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, is the burnout of teachers and how we can't get teachers in. And I think, you're part of that is right in that part of what you said earlier is a big part of it, all the loading that is going on to teachers that they have to do. And I know here in Ohio now it's, it is legislative mandate after legislative mandate. You're responsible for this health and well-being and this first. Mm-hmm. So it seems to me that like AI is that part of the answer for I don't know, bringing back the joy of educating to teachers?
Yeah. Bob, I think that's a great question because when you think about that, the joy of teaching, right? How is that defined when you first started? What does that look like? And I feel like AI, when you think about, these different tools that are possible, all of a sudden the aha moment or the light comes on again as a teacher. I mean, that's part of what I've seen. When you are worried about a kid who may not have had breakfast that morning, may not have lunch or dinner, or will have lunch, but or breakfast, those things. You're worried about just the life needs of people, and then so you're kind of connected in that way with the student sometimes. But then you're also thinking, okay, I've got to be able to teach this. How can I do this? But you know what? I can come up with a plan really quickly and have an idea just by typing in a couple of quick prompts, and then I can go right into a lesson, or maybe I can build upon something I have. So I think that's right. Like it really sparks more, in my opinion, creativity. There's other opportunities of creativity with that, of having AI as your creativity too.
All right, so you just shared that a good number of your teachers hadn't even heard of this stuff. My experience in talking with people who are pretty new to or haven't had a chance to actually type prompts is that they consider it the greatest opportunity to cheat in the history of education, right? And so how have you kind of cracked that code to move teachers from fear and animosity and anger towards AI to embracing it as a creative tool that re-sparks the joy of teaching?
Yeah. What's interesting about that is that creativity and critical thinking skill, right? All of a sudden kind of combine there. Because at that point, how do you, if Chris is going to go and cheat on a test, then Chris is going to find a way to cheat on a test, right? But with whatever it may be. But at the same time, when you think about how do we get students to look at that tool as more of, okay, here's a paragraph that was created, like come up with a way to create a story about, maybe what you did on a weekend, maybe, and be it sort of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Personal. Make it a little bit more personal as they, personalized learning. That's what I was trying to say. A little bit more personalized learning as we kind of go through there. But I think to really utilize that tool, they can then take the tool and go, okay, let's edit this a little bit. Like, how's the grammar look in this when you create this? And they actually, if the students pull that story and they have to analyze it, right? So you could sort of flip it, as far as an English class goes, or some of those things go, or or is this a real science experiment? If you actually ask it to create a science experiment, is this real? Can you do this? Some of those kinds of things. I think so. I think looking at it as more of how can they utilize it as a critical thinking piece and integrate it that way, and use it that way. So I think having that sort of connection is important.
Chris, we talked a little bit before we started recording here, and you had said, and it was something I'd never heard before. You said that you thought AI and an introduction to AI should be part of onboarding of new teachers, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, that's interesting. But now, as I hear you talk, not only do I think that should be part of the onboarding, it should be part of the professional development. Not what your kids can do with AI in classrooms, but now what you can do with AI so that you can spend more time with your kids in classrooms. So. And I don't expect you to have all the answers, 37 degrees and all, 36, working on a 37. I don't expect you to have all the answers, but it's people like you who are putting thought in this. Somebody has to think of, this needs to be PD for the teachers, for them to use. So what do you suggest that we start, if I'm an administrator and I'm like, okay, I heard Chris and man, that guy's got it right. He even predicted Skynet, so we're going to have to listen to him. Where should they start? Because I've not ever heard of anybody onboarding with AI or doing PD on it. So where should they start?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things that when you think about where should we start in onboarding, and when we were talking earlier, I love how you said, okay, so you're going to get your email address, you're going to get your login for your computer and your device. You either have an iPad, a Mac, or a PC, right, or Dell or HP, whatever you have. And then all of a sudden, here are the list of tools that we utilize in this district to be a successful teacher. So the district, I feel like, needs to define, here are the tools, right? So you have your hardware, and what software does that look like? But I think one of the different pieces of software has to be an AI tool. And when you think about that, I think it talks about, I think about all the emergency certified teachers that we've hired in the district this year. Okay. And if I'm
just as a ballpark, do you have a sense of what percentage of emergency certifications you have? Teaching?
I would say, let's see, don't quote me on that. Let's see. I would say, as I'm doing a Jeopardy theme song in my brain.
Don't worry.
I'll
take random facts for 200.
Yeah, that's right. All right, here we go. Yes. All right, here we go, Bob. And I would say we probably hired around 400 this year out of our about 3,500 staff members. Is that about right?
Not an insignificant amount. Right. Not an insignificant.
Right. That is not. Yeah. Regardless of the exact percentage, that's a significant.
Yeah. So it's a pretty significant piece there. But I feel like that's where we have to get them right up front, right? So when you're a new teacher or you're an emergency certified teacher, you're going to have continuing professional learning throughout the year. And I think not only do you start with it, but you continue to build with it throughout the year in that process. So if you can set them up with, okay, here's some lessons. We already have curriculum in place in Oklahoma City, right? Or any district, most likely they do.
Sure.
And so what they'll do is you could actually pull the curriculum, and you can even have different ideas created by AI, by the curriculum that's already created in your district. So you could create some other things and build some scaffold from that, right? The other thing that I think is really important is that you could actually just take the state standard off the website, put it in the AI tool, and say, I need a lesson with video production showing camera placement, and I need it to be themed with Superman. And the next thing you know, you're going to get, you're going to get
got a lesson, and you could have pictures and everything. So you said as part of that onboarding, they should learn like an AI tool. Now, I understand that your answer to this question will be obsolete in probably about 4 weeks, but what AI tool would you think would be sort of core to a new teacher sort of learning AI for their job?
Well, I think there's 2 tools right now that I feel, maybe 3. I'm going to say there are 3 tools that they should utilize. But I think for sure the foundation should be ChatGPT, just because I feel like you can learn how to prompt it in the right way. And I think understanding how to create the right stem, the right prompt stem is important. So I think that allows that to happen. I think Magic School AI is another one that I've really been a part of and had a lot of opportunity to experience and showcase and play and work with our teachers with. And it's been great. It's really designed for that school environment. So it's really catered to that. I think you're going to get a lot from those 2 tools right away. I think Claude is another great tool as well that I know a lot of people utilize too. So I will say from a creative aspect, let's go completely creative here for just a minute. If you haven't really checked out Adobe Express right now and what Adobe is doing, it is incredible. Firefly, incredible. Photoshop, the whole, if you can sit there and type in anything you want to dream and all of a sudden it becomes alive, you're like, what is this happening? So Adobe, kudos to Adobe right now, because I really feel like from the creative standpoint, they are locking and going, and it's looking great, from what they're doing.
Educational Collaborators is one of the Adobe PD partners, National Adobe PD partners.
Okay.
So our team was just down at Adobe Max and came back and shared some of the amazing things that they're doing. Like you can take we were just talking about this morning, actually, where you can take your video. This is in Premiere, not in Express.
Okay,
but
Premiere, yeah.
You can take a video clip like this, put it in there, and rewrite the words, and it will modify the video to say what you told it to say, which also is a spectacular notion in terms of deep fakes. But we don't need to go in that direction right now. We actually need to move on in our interview. But yeah, I think you're right. What Adobe is doing with AI is unfreaking believable.
Yeah.
We actually had Mary Beth Hertz on the show earlier, and she had we talked to her about more of the ethics and sort of regulatory aspect of AI. And I mean, when you see tools like some of the Adobe tools and you see what they could do, it's like, holy moly.
Yeah.
We need to really think about it's amazing what you can do, but you also need to think very carefully about what you can do, you know? And so, yeah, amazing stuff.
I like
Amazing
that.
stuff.
And I like Mary Beth is good. I like her stuff. She's really good. So I follow her. So yes.
Oh, great.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's always good when our guests know one another.
Yeah.
So that's
No,
great.
Alex, speaking of our other guests, we're kind of known for knowing famous people, right? We had a professional viola player,
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
former esports professional, and
Ooh,
now
nice.
we have the voice of the pride of Oklahoma. Chris is the voice.
that is right.
He's the guy.
Yes. Yes.
He's the guy. Okay, so to our
tell us.
listeners who don't know what the voice of the pride of Oklahoma is,
Yes.
Chris, tell folks what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I get the pleasure of serving the University of Oklahoma marching band. So I get to announce them on the field as they come out, and of course be the voice of the show. So if there's kind of you introduce and talk about all the different things that are going to go on during the show during the halftime performance, and it's great because it's a fun opportunity because I get to travel with the big band. So wherever the big band, the entire band goes, yeah, they'll take me and we do different shows on location or whatever. So usually
like to other games or to just other displays.
To other games.
So
Yeah.
you get to be. So I guess I didn't really realize that. So when you're the visiting team, you still get to announce
sometimes
the team.
Sometimes
the
we do.
band.
Depends on the location. Like Oklahoma State, we were talking about that earlier. Yes, that's also a wonderful experience to go and do that. Now, I did do. This was a lot of fun in Miami Beach, Florida, when we went to the Orange Bowl. We did the Beach Bash, the Capital One Beach Bash, and I'll never forget this moment because I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to go up and introduce the band, what we're going to play, and that's what we're supposed to do. And there's like thousands of people out here on the beach. It's at night.
Yeah.
Lights are everywhere. And so the producer comes to me and he says, "Hey, good luck. You're emceeing the next 45. Goodbye." And hands me the mic and just go. And I was like, "I'm sorry, did you say MC? Because I'm not, what?" And he's like, "Yep, see ya." And he pushes me out. It was kind of like one of those moments when you're like, am I really going out there? I guess I am. And so, yeah, so you ever get caught in that situation, here's what you do. Here's the clue, okay? Know where you're at and say, "What's up, Miami?" And then the whole crowd just goes crazy. And then you can go from there and it's all good.
We love you.
That's right.
Springfield.
So many valuable things from this, right? So many valuable things. I got, you've just described my podcasting career here. How did I get here? So I'll keep that in mind. So Alex, when we start the next one, and I'm like, how's it going? Podcast audience? Well,
Podcast audience.
The other thing is, as you might guess, I am in YouTube right now typing in Capital One Beach Bash so that I can. Chris doing it, which I'm sure is phenomenal.
Oh man, it was fun.
So we had to get that. You probably have had the largest audience of any of our guests then, because I can only imagine how many seats there are to fill at the stadium in Oklahoma. So
yeah, there are 86,000.
Yeah, it's a pretty big audience.
I will add this. I became an Oklahoma fan when Lincoln Riley left.
Yes.
So
yes. Oh, thank you.
So
thank you very much.
Go
yes.
Oklahoma. So we're gonna I'm gonna call an audible here. Got that?
Sure. Yeah.
Audible
Please.
here. So
Right.
I like that. Instead of punting, I appreciate that. Instead of punting, I would have been worried. Well, we're going to punt, Chris. This is
next. So for our audience, Alex and I have a little wager here on your next answer. And for the record, wagering is legal in Ohio, where I'm at. So
okay.
If you're following along at home and you're placing your own bets, Please follow local and state laws and bet responsibly. So, Chris, who was your favorite teacher or had a big impact on you as a student and why?
Oh man!
Oh,
wow, what a great!
no!
I win!
Alex win.
Was that the wager? Was like he's not going to know. He's not going to know.
Alex said, "I said everybody knows," and Alex said, "Not everybody knows." Bob.
Well, I can rattle off 3 right off the top of my head. Okay, maybe. And Gary Kramer, who I mentioned earlier about the cable access studio. One of my history teachers, Mr. Hecox, was great. And then Dan O'Halloran, one of my science teachers. And then as I go forward and I think about those years of, education, it was more about, them lifting you up and motivating you to kind of just keep continuing on and following your passion. So encouraging you. So, I may not have cared too much about history, but I did learn how much it cost to make a hamburger at the time at McDonald's. That was pretty funny. We talked about that in class. And then the experiment that we did in science, about dropping things off a building with eggs and those kinds of things and launching rockets. I think similar to those kind of experiences, I think those are the kind of things that we should be creating for students right now, right? With those engaging experiences and those classroom experiences. So yeah, I love those.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we've talked about a few different tools. We've talked about some processes. One of the things we like to give our audience is asking you about your expertise about what are some resources that maybe our audience can go and look at to really help understand how to leverage AI well in the classroom.
Okay, I think there are a lot of authors that you could really, search Google and sort of follow. I think Mary Beth is one for sure, that you can follow. I think understanding, I really think people should take it a step further. So when you start thinking about the classroom, I think that's great. But it's very interesting if you want to take a deeper dive. If you've heard about the book with The Wave, The Coming Wave, right? Have you heard about that?
No,
I haven't.
Okay, so
The Coming Wave.
The Coming Wave is a great book, and it's by Mustafa Suleiman. I probably mispronounced that with my southern accent there, so I apologize, Mustafa. But he's the co-founder of DeepMind and Inflection AI, and so he was part of that group that was bought by Google with DeepMind. And so it's very interesting to kind of hear his perspective on artificial intelligence and kind of and I'm listening to the audiobook right now, or half of it. I read one part of it and I'm listening. I'm so fascinated by it. But it's really interesting. He's got some very valid points about how technology has grown and how we've been able to utilize it as a tool, but then also, can we contain it? And he's talking about how artificial intelligence right now, you look at, is it really possible to contain? Well, I don't know, right? Right now, it's in everything we do. So it's part of our daily life. So anyway, but it's a really interesting read and listen if you like audiobooks as well. So, but I would definitely say, explore those, get on OpenAI's website and explore, what they offer and what they're actually doing and sort of the different things. And Google as well. I think Google is another place, the Google Bard. So if you go to, the bard.google.com and you can kind of dive into that and learn a little bit more about that. I would never hesitate to look up like edX or Coursera or some of those and take some courses in those and just learn a little bit more about how AI is and what it looks like. So
excellent. Well, Chris, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you,
Bob
guys.
and I had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
This was
yeah, me too, guys. I'm honored. I'm so honored to be here, and I love talking to you guys. This has been great. So thank you so much.
Absolutely great to have you. Holy cow, Bob! That was a ton of fun.
It was, wasn't it? I mean, that we could have gone on forever. Not that anybody would want to listen to us to go on forever, but I could have talked to Chris all night. That was awesome.
Oh my gosh! And so we actually did keep talking to him. So after we stopped recording the show, we must have talked for about another half an hour. And Chris even gave us his announcer voice that he gives when the Pride of Oklahoma band joins the field. That was so much fun.
And we've successfully recruited him to be the voice of learning through technology. That's right. Now we just have to come up with something for him to do, but not too much because he'll take our jobs because he's really good at it.
Oh, he was outstanding at it. So that was just a ton of fun. All right. So what sort of struck you the most in our conversation, aside from the fact that he was the voice of the Pride of Oklahoma marching band?
So I love, in our role doing operational IT for schools, we're the people handing out that Google account or that Microsoft account, and and an Active Directory or Azure account, I love the idea of, here's your login for ChatGPT or OpenAI or Bard. Here's your login for that. Here's how you can use it. Especially, when he talked about how 400 teachers with alternate certification means they've not really got a lot of training in what they're doing and where to start. You use that whole thought partnership thing that we talked about with Chris, who had talked about that, and Mary talked about that in a previous episode. It's just a great place to get somebody started. Log in, type in a few things, see how this works, and then build out from there, and then compare it to curriculum. I don't want to make it sound easy. Hopefully it lightens the load some, because we know we could use for lightening the load on our teachers.
Absolutely. And I was glad that he sort of brought up, time and how valuable time is in terms of like developing that relationship with students. And I think that notion of using AI as a trade-off to give you more of what you want, I think not only allows us to do the things that are most important when we're working with our students, but it also gives you a sense of sort of the administrative and tactical value of a tool like this. And it sort of opens your eyes and opens your mind to get into these tools and make them not feel afraid, not be afraid of them, right? I also liked, like you said, about the onboarding, but particularly with, emergency teachers, right? Who are just, God bless them. I wish we didn't have to reach out to them. I wish we had waiting lists for teachers in schools. Bob, I was glad that you brought up the sort of new teachers, right? And how valuable this can be for new teachers. I mean, I'm sad that we don't have waiting lists of teachers to get into schools, that right now there are so few teachers that we need to go to emergency certifications. But the fact that there are people who are willing to take on the role of teacher, I just think is amazing. And anything that we can do to support them is valuable. And I thought, AI is a wonderful tool to give you some of those example lessons, those, you can just run through, give me another example, and it just prepares you to give that sort of context to the lesson plan that came in the textbook that normally teachers have to spend years to get.
Yeah, you know that there aren't enough administrators and staff to coach those 400 teachers there, or in all of our schools.
Yeah.
So something to bounce ideas off.
Yeah, as a thought partner. Well, that was great. Thanks so much, Bob. What a wonderful show. I'm looking forward to the next one.